Everyone says that Apex Seals kills rotaries. Well, this one only did 15,000 miles. And trust me, it wasn't Apex Seals that killed it.
I was chasing shadows, moving too fast. Didn't see the way our love couldn't last. Now I'm stuck replaying what I put you through. Every night I'm haunted by the thought of you. If you need my love, call me and I'll step.
So let's be clear about one thing. This is not my Bridgeported RX-8, the one that Ryan Roy Performance built. That car's still going strong, it's still fine. This is actually my old Streetported engine that was in the car about 2 years ago. Now this engine only had, as we just said, 15,000 miles on it. So it's not Apex Seals that killed it. And this was actually rebuilt. Looking at this and the pictures that you're going to see later, you wouldn't think this was built by the Northwest specialist at the time, who, as far as I know now, don't really deal with them anymore. Some would probably say more thankfully than others. Anyways, this car engine was actually torn down by Ryan Roy Performance, not myself. Do not have the skill set for that. I like to think I'm a mechanic, but I don't think I'm actually that good. This was torn down by them, and I decided to keep the engine for pretty much educational reasons. You know, I can take it on me. It's a really cool thing to have and show people how these cars function. Now, it's definitely worth adding, this car didn't just fail out of nowhere. I thought it did, but when I actually look back on it, there was a good probably 6 months beforehand of this car slowly failing, and it wasn't the usual symptoms that people look out for, because, you know, I was one of those people that looked out too much for Apex Seal failure and nothing else really. But there's actually something a lot more common that can go wrong here. Alright, this is the quick moment just to show you how a rotary works. If you've not been around here before, we're going to quickly deep dive into how this rotary spins. So let's spin this wankle. So honestly, these engines are so much simpler than pistons. There's no moving up and down like in a traditional engine. Instead, we spin around like a little Dorito. So what happens is this little rotor just spins around this housing, and it keeps spinning. It takes in fuel and air. Nearly dropped it. It takes in fuel and air. It compresses and mixes. And when it compresses, the spark plugs ignite. And it comes back up to the exhaust ports. And it just spins and spins and spins. Now you guys can see how tight this is. So no wonder people think Apex Seals are the thing that kill these engines. Because obviously it's tight and there's not much room for error. You just can't imagine when this spins like this, it can spin up to 9,000 RPM from stock. And some modified engines can spin even quicker than that. So there wasn't just one issue that killed this car. There was a multitude of little issues and probably just one main issue that actually killed it in the end. But let's dive into what some of those little issues were before we dive into what actually killed this engine for reals. Down to the first bit is the actual iron. What happened here? Well, there's a few things to note really. The first thing is this black mark that looks like chatters all around the outside. And if you run your finger on, you can actually feel, well, you guys can't run your finger, but if you run your finger along here, you can actually feel the grooves that this chatter made. Now, what caused that? Well, I'm not saying it was bad rebuilding or bad workmanship, but weren't ported properly at the right angles. And what that has caused is because the angles weren't exactly correct, it's caused the Apex Seals to basically chatter across the entire housing, which basically wrote off this housing iron for being used again. That was really the main issue with this. Now, there is a secondary issue, which this certain rebuilder seems to have been known for, by the sounds of it, from what I've speaking to people about. But if you look here, and you'll see this on the other parts that we're going to show you, using a lot of excess sealant. Now, this is going to come into play actually a little bit further down the line, because part of this excess sealant was one of the reasons for it actually dying. Not the full reason, but it was part of it. The most famous part about this car, really. Everybody knows about the spinning Dorito. These aren't just any spinning Doritos. These are actually lightened and balanced spinning Doritos. Now, these have a few issues with them, surprisingly. Now, they don't look at it first glance. They look pretty good. I mean, the guy that does the workmanship on these is absolutely fantastic. I think everybody knows who ports these out in the UK. But there's a couple of issues with these, and surprisingly, the Apex Seals in here, well, that sit here, I don't actually have them, weren't a problem. But you can see one of the problems are these marks. Now, these actually, we decided to err on the side of caution with these marks. You can't really see them too well on camera, but these marks, we decided just to scrap these rotors, play it safe, get some brand new ones, and lighten and balance them. Technically, that was a lie. We decided to balance them because lightening, it's up for debate what that actually does. So that's why we ended up with new rotors. Obviously, the main failure point actually caused some damage to these as well, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but I think you can tell by looking at the two different sides what that might have been. Now we're very close to touching on to the main problem of what happened to this engine. My hands look disgusting. I still haven't cleaned these engine parts. The housings. These played a key role in the failure of the car. So you can actually see here where there's a lot of wear marks across the housings. Now this is obviously what scrapped these. You know, there was no chance of being able to renitrate them, and you know, it's not really recommended anymore to do that. You see there's quite a lot of damage inside. There's some chrome that has fully chipped away as well. So these housings were pretty much toast. But surprisingly, that wasn't what killed it. You can still see what killed it right now. So little things hanging off the side. It was the coolant seals. Now, I've spoken to a lot of people recently in the RX-8 community, and most people that had their engines rebuilt, especially by this rebuilder, have all had coolant seal failures. So when we actually tore this down, there was two sort of main areas where we had problems with the coolant seals. One was on the outside here where there was excess silicone that was actually touching the coolant seals and pretty much causing the seal not to seat properly. And the other problem was it was about in this area down here, and the coolant seals were actually twisted a bit and they weren't seated properly. And there was a third contributing factor where the channels, I mean, you can actually see how dirty these coolant seal channels are, were never cleaned out properly from the last rebuild, which obviously contributed to the seals not seating properly, and ultimately ended up with coolant in the housings, which then caused the ultimate failure. There is also one more thing to note as well, which was very interesting, considering the reputation that this builder had. They were using red coolant. Now, I don't know if you guys know, but you shouldn't use red coolant in these cars. It has to be Mazda's FL22 green coolant. Otherwise, well, I mean, you can see the corrosion that happens. Now, I'm not calling out a certain rebuilder. It's not in my nature. It's why I've not mentioned their name. Obviously, I will praise good rebuilders like Rotary Performance, of course. So obviously there's a lot of factors that come into these engines failing. Many, many factors. But I genuinely think one of the things that are killing these engines more than anything, especially when you look at this, it's only done 15,000 miles. And look at the state of it. I mean, if you don't think this is bad, look at this, 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 and this from when it got taken apart. That looks like a car that's done 15 years in the trenches. It looks so bad. But that's one of the things where, you know, if you're getting this car rebuilt, make sure you get it rebuilt properly. Make sure you go to someone reputable, and sure as hell, make sure you get pictures of the engine as it's being put in and put together, so that you know it's done properly. There's probably one hint for all my fellow Rotary owners out there like me to sort of avoid this happening. And I did say that there was sort of warning signs for 6 months that I never even picked up on. So what were they? Well, the first one was, and this happened probably about 6 months before any other sign, was due. Sometimes cold starts were a little bit longer, tiny bit longer, and then, excuse me, and then after the car would start or like just catch and start up, you'd hear almost like a little like burbly noise. Now that's quite key actually, because that burbly noise was actually the coolant inside the housings. And I didn't know that until someone told me. And I looked back at an old video and I was like, wow, he's right. That was actually it. And then a little bit later than that, it was on one of the track days actually at Donnington Park. Insert Donnington Park here. At that track day, I was coming in to the pits and pulled into my garage, and the car smelt like it was overheating. Now, if you don't know RX-8s, the actual stock engine temperature is pretty much a dummy. If that goes, it's already way too late. Your engine's toast anyways. But that was just saying it was a normal temperature. Now, obviously, now in this car, I've tried to look after this car as much as possible now. It's got a Bridgeport in it. It's got bigger 53mm coil rods, gauges in. So it's got Pro Sport gauges and the Ryan Roy Performance gauge pod cluster. Now that is needed because it actually tells you the proper temperature of your car, especially if you're tracking it. Because I do think that very much contributed to this car overheating and dying. So I highly recommend that you guys get that. Now, do you guys really think this looks like a 15 to 16,000 mile car? Because I sure as hell think it looks a lot older with the state of it. But I guess that's part of the moral of the story is obviously look after the car. I say that all the time. Definitely look at getting some modifications to help with reliability, whether that's clean oil feed systems, gauges to help you know the temperature. It's really, really important that you do that. The other important thing is make sure that you go to a reputable rebuilder, and one that actually sends you pictures and gives you really good customer service like Ryan Roy Performance did for me, because hopefully that Bridgeport is going to last a long time, and hopefully we won't be making a video like this anytime in the future. Let me know what you think. Do you think this car looks the age it does? Did you know a lot about rotary engines? Remember to like, subscribe, share the video. It helps out a lot. Thanks very much.